Hello and welcome back to the part 2 video of beta reading. So last week we went over that I was now offering my services as a beta reader, but I just want to talk in this video about why I use paid beta reading myself as an author, and sort of how I see both volunteer and paid beta readers, because I think there is a difference even though they're both really helpful. Firstly, I'm just going to go through a quick rundown of what I do when I have typed the end on my draft, okay, my first draft. What I typically do is leave it. I will leave that book for a couple of days at least, just to sort of take a break and take a step back. But then I email it to my Kindle account so I can read on my Kindle book. Why do I do that? Now, if you've heard me talk about this sort of thing before, then you'll know that I like to read and get an overview of the story as a whole. If I do that on my laptop or I print it out, I am going to be tempted to fix things like typos and sentence mistakes, or switch things around that don't sound quite right, or add a bit more description where it needs to be. But that will detract and distract me from getting that big picture, that overview of the story, because it's quicker to read than it is to write and edit, let's put it that way. So I try to read the whole thing in one go. Well, not one go, depends on the length of the story, it might take me a few days, but I tend to just read through. That way I get a really good idea of where the glaring plot holes might be. I get an idea of what needs to be developed, what plot lines need to be weaved through that haven't been, because when I'm drafting I tend to focus on the main plot, but quite often, especially like in fantasy worlds, there's a lot of subplot stuff going on, and that I have been adding in after the main plot. I also get a good overview of a character, and if they have an actual arc in that book, you get a better idea when you're reading the whole thing in one go, and so on and so forth. So that's what I do. And then I go back through, after I've done that read through, and add that stuff in. I develop those storylines, I develop that description that needed adding, but I just didn't add it in the first time around. I am notorious for being an underwriter, and I will then edit and add more in. Some people are the complete opposite and they're overwriters, so their editing will be trying to take things out and reduce things, maybe uncomplicate storylines that they have overcomplicated, and so on. So I've done that sort of big picture look, then I go through on a chapter by chapter basis, and this is the time that I start looking more at a sort of sentence by sentence level. This is where I might tidy up sentences or fix that sentence. That paragraph doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'm going to edit it up. I'm going to sort of tweak it, rewrite that sentence, and really have a play with it, almost sentence by sentence, but I do that chapter by chapter rather than as a story as a whole. So, and the reason why I do that is because I'm trying to get it as ready as possible for another person to read through it. So I've done what I can do in my big picture world, but I am stuck in that world, so I know more than I've written, so I need other eyes on it at this point. But the easier it is for someone else to read, the more they're able to focus on the story and the characters and the flow, rather than there being 100 typos on one page or the sentences being really, really clunky. That can still happen, but the more tidying up you've done, the easier it is for them to pick up on that other stuff that you really need them to pick up on. There's 4 reasons why I do a mix of paid and volunteer beta readers. So, for instance, first one is that you want a variety of people to give feedback, and specifically you want readers to give you feedback, and that's where your volunteer beta readers come in, because you can actually put messages out on social media and you'll get other authors and readers that are interested in your project and want to beta read for you. And I find this sort of, well, again, it can vary, but a lot, especially if it's reader feedback, I find I tend to get more general feedback about story, which is really helpful. If I have other authors beta reading for me, then they can be a little bit more specific about the writing as well, which is handy. But also they're a lot more in tune with the sort of story writing process and the things that go into writing a story. So you're getting a good mix of readers and writers there. But it can vary. Then you have your paid beta readers, which are a lot more in depth. They often give a lot more examples, some of them write reports, and so on and so forth. So
That's why I like to use a mix of paid and volunteer. The second reason, so I think I touched on it, but the level of feedback. You can never guarantee the level of feedback you're going to get, which is why if you do a mix, you're guaranteed to get some people going more in depth. I've had some brilliant volunteer beta readers, like absolutely, and I've had some brilliant paid beta reader feedback as well, but I've also had beta reader feedback that's just like, yeah, this is great, which, don't get me wrong, is really lovely to hear, but sometimes we need a little bit more than that. So if you have a handful of paid and volunteer beta readers, then you're going to get like a varying levels of in-depthness. Not a word, but we'll go with it. The point number 3 is that sometimes I feel like volunteer beta readers aren't as forthcoming with things that need changing in your story, whether that be because they don't know how to, or they're a bit nervous about saying that. But I find that sometimes then they're not as picky as you need them to be, whereas a paid beta reader will normally pick up on that stuff for you because you're paying them to do that. So they will be a lot more confident at telling you where the issues are in your manuscript and what you need to do to improve it. Even if they like it, there's still things that you can do to improve on a story. And that's where I find the paid beta reading comes in quite helpfully. And then the last point is that one person's opinion is just that, one person's opinion. So if you've got a mix of paid and volunteer betas and you have a handful of them, then you're going to be getting a wide variety of feedback and personal opinion. There is no reason why you have to take on every single bit of feedback and advice that you get. But the more you get an idea of what is the general reading experience. So if I only have one reader say they weren't so sure about something, but everyone else comments that they like it, I'm probably going to leave that alone. If I get quite a few readers mentioning something, then I think, okay, yeah, maybe something isn't coming across here how I wanted it to come across. Now, for me personally, I would say I take on board and adapt about 90 to 95% of what's given to me in varying degrees of levels. But I'm somebody that if somebody's picked up on something, there's a reason why they've done that. I think I very rarely go, oh, I don't agree with that. Most of the time I go, yeah, actually, I can see where you're coming from. I'm going to edit that and adapt it. So I've had some brilliant paid beta readers who really focus on that structure and that big picture stuff, which is like a developmental edit. And so if you get someone like that, then you're onto a winner here. But I just had some paid beta reading come back to me actually, and she was a lovely woman. But just from our interactions, she knew that I could take a little bit of banter and stuff. And the comments throughout the document just made me laugh. I will give an example. So in my dialogue, I said the person's name quite a lot, and she just kept saying, how many times did we say in this person's name? Is this natural? So they were the first sort of times. And then after like the 4th page of me saying this character's name within speech, like all the time, she was like, again, no more names for you. And there was just a lot of jokes throughout. That doesn't sound that jokey, but it was at the time, okay? And that's how I am with some of my beta readers that I've beta read for, so some of my authors that I've beta read for, and you just develop a really good working relationship. And if you are giving your book baby to somebody, you need someone that's going to take good care of it and respect it, but also respect you as an author.
So I know that video stopped quite abruptly because I wasn't planning on turning this into 2 different videos, but I hope you've enjoyed today's video on sort of why I use paid beta reading and volunteer beta reading. I'd love to know your thoughts as well, so let me know down in the comments about paid beta reading. I do sort of see this as a really viable second option for those of us who have a tight budget, and as I said, I've used it myself and I found it really helpful, and I use it in place of that developmental editing. And then I still go for volunteer beta readers when it's closer to publication to sort of get that reader viewpoint and that final viewpoint from the reader, and then I edit and finish off my edits from there. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed today's video and I will see you next time. Bye guys.